another morning in the village of Asakore, Ghana. 6-year-old Dominic Achempong is getting ready for school. His mother, Avina, has big hopes for her kindergartner. But here in Ghana, as in most of sub-Saharan Africa, deprived communities face enormous challenges in educating their children. For those like Dominic, poverty robs ambition and forecloses dreams. Despite billions of dollars in aid to developing countries for free public education, government schools do not effectively educate all children. Parents complain there is a lack of access, poor governance and teacher performance, and they are not free because there are fees beyond tuition. This causes parents to seek other low-cost alternatives within their communities. In 2008, the IDP Foundation went to Ghana to survey local progress in microfinance for education. They discovered countless poor families living on less than $2 a day that chose, nevertheless, to send their children to local, low-cost, privately owned schools. Although the schools are marginalized and receive little or no external aid, market demand has caused this sector to exponentially grow, not just in Ghana, but throughout the developing world.
In most cases, they don't have access to electricity. In most cases, they probably have the land, but then it's not developed because they don't have the finances to develop the land.
For these schools to grow, they desperately need capital, but are unable to get a loan because they are deemed too risky by most financial institutions. But the IDP Foundation saw an opportunity to empower the efforts of the poor to complement public education. They hypothesized that proper business training would enable these private school proprietors to both take and successfully repay loans, which allows them to improve their schools. To achieve this goal, IDP partnered with Sinapiapa Trust to implement this unique and innovative program. They are the largest microfinance institution in Ghana and a member of Opportunity International. The IDP Rising Schools program provides proprietors with specific microfinance loan products to address infrastructure development, vehicle acquisition, and working capital needs. These loans are linked to 9 comprehensive capacity-building trainings in financial literacy and school management. The income generated by the loan portfolio supports the trainings, which in turn affects the successful repayment of the loans and increases the sustainability of the program. The proprietor training is delivered by qualified Sinapiapa Trust staff, such as Vincent and Ponsa.
I hope you understand. So the school is a separate entity. The owner is also separate.
After the training, they now know how to put things together. They now know how to organize their books. Proprietors should work as businessmen, but they shouldn't put away the social needs of their communities. This is something that as a program we push as an agenda.
The training and loans have positively impacted school children through better infrastructure, greater access, increased enrollment, more days in school, increased parent involvement, and improved school management. Lily Bob and her low-cost private school are shining examples of the IDP Rising Schools program.
We want to impact on the economies, bring a change, and bringing a change, we start from educating the person.
After completing her financial literacy and school management training, Lily has taken and repaid 3 loans.
The first 2 loans totaling about $5,200 American dollars enabled me to create a 5-classroom block. With my 3rd loan, I was able to buy a vehicle to serve as our Bar Memorial Community School bus.
Since joining the Rising Schools program, Lily's enrollment has doubled. They now have 13 grade levels.
The support of the IDP Rising Schools program has given our school a very bright future.
We've been really successful in building a largely sustainable model, and
continue to scale up throughout Ghana, we can only dream about what an inspiration that might be to other microfinance organisations and what an impact that might have on literally millions of children around the world.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be able to tell you about this program because when we began it, back in 2009, it was the first time that we brought schools into this program. We really had no idea what we were doing because much to our surprise, amazement really, what we found out is that actually nobody has holistically or in a widespread networked way addressed this sector in trying to extend capital to schools that are really at the very bottom of the economic pyramid. One of the things that had really interested me and the reason I got started with this was the understanding that throughout the entire developing world, this sector of privately owned, very low resource schools is actually exponentially increasing. And yet, despite the billions and billions of dollars in aid that have been given to governments for education or by other funders who fund NGOs, they largely implement programs in government schools. So there's obviously a huge disconnect there. And if we're really going to talk about education for all, why would we continue to keep doing exactly the same thing? I think it's very important that we see this marginalized sector, disenfranchised in most countries, has to be included in the education for all equation. One of the things that I find is the most interesting about this is that there is enormous pushback from this idea. People still continue to say, well, education is a universal human right. Education should be provided by governments and it should be free. And it is true, this should be the case, but the reality is it isn't the case. And as long as it isn't the case, it doesn't make any sense to continue to ignore the sector. So here we are with parents who do not see education as their universal human right, but rather they see, unfortunately, it as a commodity for which they're going to have to pay. And so you have the poorest people in the most deprived areas having to pay for something that is supposed to be provided free of charge. So when we thought, okay, why is it that nobody ever will extend capital to schools that are like this? And we discovered after interviewing people that it's deemed too risky. Nobody will actually assume that kind of risk for a school which, as you can see, has pretty much no collateral. And in any event, the collateral that it does have, nobody wants. So we sat together with a microfinance organization, a Ghanaian microfinance organization, and we developed this program. And we developed it through doing a huge amount of on-the-ground market research, interviewing parents who chose to send their children to these schools. We interviewed school proprietors. We went out and looked for schools. And most importantly of all, we made sure that we spent a lot of time talking to Ghana Education Services. We talked to the government, and we have kept the government very closely informed as to what we're doing. We received an endorsement from the Ministry of Education. They're very interested in what we're doing, but they don't intend to actually embrace what we're doing. So one of the things that I find is very important to think about is that the gap is actually widening. In sub-Saharan Africa, for instance, not just Ghana, the population is actually increasing. If the population is increasing, that's even more children who are not being reached. So I think it's really very important that we start to bring pressure to bear, advocacy, for policy change. I find that since this program has started, one of the things is that it's getting a lot of attention. And I think the reason that it's getting attention is because there is now increasingly a dialogue. There are papers that are being written and published by the World Bank. The Development Fund differed from England. AusAid is taking a look at the sector. And there is definitely a movement to more dialogue about the sector. The Global Partnership for Education, for instance, has just added a full-time staff member to concentrate on the private foundation, private sector part of the GPE. Actually, at the moment, out of 18 board seats on the Global Partnership for Education, which is the huge dispenser of funds around the world for education, there's only one shared board seat that is to talk about both the private sector and the private foundations. But this hiring of a new person that is dedicated to looking at and studying the private sector contribution is a big step forward. So while we are seeing more dialogue about it, we're not exactly seeing any movement by the funders, by the United Nations. Everybody has mandates, everybody has policies. It's hugely bureaucratic, so getting a change of policy is not easy. And to get governments to buy into accepting the change of policy is not easy either, because it becomes a very political thing. Funders, to demand that kind of accountability and transparency from the government as to how they're using funds dispensed for education to actually embrace all of the children in the country is not enforced at all. So I'd like to ask you if any of you have any questions about what I'm saying, and if so, hopefully I can answer them. Yes?
Thank you very much. First of all, my name is Irene Pritzker. I'm the chairman and founder of Engage Consulting. It's a lobbying firm, the first one in Egypt. We work on public strategy advice, sustainable and sensible business regulations, and government relations systems. My couple of questions, if you may allow me. One, why Ghana? I mean, how did Ghana come in the picture? Is the program that you've devised did such schools exist, or did they get built as per your loan facility? And are the programs being accredited? When you say we got the buy-in of the Minister, are the programs being accredited, accepted as a degree or a certificate that the kids get?
Okay. All right, let me try and answer them in order if I can remember each one. Why Ghana? Ghana happens to be a country where I was first introduced to the idea of microfinance for education and went to take a look. And it was actually a program that Opportunity International, which is one of the largest microfinance networks in the world, was hoping to implement and start in Ghana. When I got over there, I discovered that the schools that they were going to be giving loans to were actually very large schools in comparison. So I got very interested in this and in empowering this already existing very bottom of the economic pyramid sector. And Sinapiaba Trust is a Ghanaian microfinance organization, the largest in Ghana, and a member of Opportunity International, and they suggested that I work with them. And having an extremely strong local partner is key in doing something like this. And you need to be really dedicated and have the buy-in. But what we were hoping to show, and what we are showing, is that not only is there a return on investment financially, but there's a huge social impact return on investment for a financial institution that wants to take this sort of thing on. What was the second question you asked?
Were the schools built?
No, the schools are all existing. They look like the ones you've just seen in here. we've tried to show you what they're able to do with their loans to build the classroom blocks. And it's important to have that stability. You can say, well, what do you do about actually improving learning outcomes? If you don't have an environment where the children are able to actually go to school every day, if you don't have toilet facilities for the girls, if you don't have a roof over your head and divisions between classrooms, you do not have a learning environment which is conducive to have sustained and better learning outcomes. What we have seen with that, when we had the 105 schools that we piloted, and we did it in 3 tranches so that we could sort out everything we did wrong in subsequent tranches, we found with 27,000 kids that were in those schools, the enrollment increased 13%. There's just so many metrics that we have had outside researchers gather. We've engaged universities in Ghana to come in and conduct research so that we're not telling our own story. So they are all existing schools. And the last question you had was about the government, and yes, when the school enters our program, the very first requirement we have is that they begin to process registration with the government so that the government knows where they are. And we think that's very important because a registered school has a much better ability to lobby for itself.
We talked about, my name is Srival, isn't it? School principal. My name is Srival, and I'm a principal of a GEM school here in the UAE. You talked about 105 schools, and all 105 schools were success stories, or do you have any lessons of failure?
Sorry, I'm just...
All 105 schools that you talked about are success stories, or do you have any lessons in failure?
Lessons in failure?
Yeah.
Well, we started with 120 in the pilot, so 15 were either asked to leave or they closed along the way because of a death of the school owner or something like that. But because of the high risk of extending capital to these schools, we're extremely strict about their attendance at the trainings. And the way we did the trainings is we have 9 modules. And in the morning, there's financial literacy, and in the afternoon, there's school management. But these modules take place 1 day a week apart. So these proprietors are with the loan officers for 9 consecutive weeks. The loan officers are especially trained to deliver the trainings, and the modules that we created together with Sanapi Abbott Trust are scripted so that everybody is getting the same material. And these lessons, we feel, gives the best chance of them being able to manage their finances to be able to repay a loan.
May I ask one more question, please? These are loans, and what are the terms of the loans? Like interest?
The interest rate that we have fixed on the loan, for the loan repayment is 25%, which is way below market for a microfinance loan in Ghana, which is normally between 36 to 43 or 4%. We've been able to do this because we are targeting cheap money.
May I ask a question, please?
Yes, I just don't want to go into...
We'll take this as the last question, just because of time.
Thank you very much. The presentation that you put up was very, very impressive, and congratulations.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask you, since you're targeting countries like Africa and Ghana especially, and you have such poor conditions there, while the children of those parents are being, while the children are being taken to school, I'm sure that itself is a task in itself. Because my question is, do you have to do any parent orientation? Do you have to do any coaxing? Because children don't get to go to schools automatically there, I would suppose. And the next question is your program only confined to Africa and Ghana? Do you have plans? What are your future plans for other places? I would say in India, some of these slums, children are also earning members of the family, and therefore parents would be loath to send children to their schools, primarily because it would mean that there is a deficiency in the earnings of the family. Thank you so much.
All right, I'll try and be very quick in answering this. One of the things is that when we find a school, now there is a waiting list to get into the program, but at first we went out and scouted. Was there a school here? Is there a school anywhere? Those children are in the school. They're already there. And the average enrollment across 105 schools, and now that we're scaling, when we have 206 schools, for some reason this miraculous number keeps on being 260 as an average school population. These are basic schools, preschool through junior high school, and varying grade levels along the way. So no, we find that the parents, these are desperately poor parents. So they will do anything to sacrifice anything so that their children have a better life than they do. So we don't get into going out and persuading the community. Those schools are full of children when we get to the proprietor.
Thank you.
Okay.